Welcome to Shadows and Gods, a channel where ancient myths are stripped of glory and revealed in their darkest truth. In this video, we descend into one of the most cursed bloodlines in all of Greek mythology, a family doomed by the gods themselves. Some families have secrets, others are marked by tragedy, but the house of Atreus was haunted by something else entirely, a divine curse so powerful it would poison 5 generations, turning fathers against sons, brothers against brothers, and mothers against their own children. This wasn't just bad luck. It was a cycle of preordained violence, a spiral of betrayal and murder that would stain a royal legacy forever. And it all started because one king, a favorite of the gods, decided to see just how far he could push them. The price for his arrogance wouldn't be paid by him alone, but by every single person who shared his blood, a debt settled in gore and tears that would echo for eternity. To be loved by the gods is an honor. To dine with them on Olympus is a privilege no mortal could even dream of. Tantalus, a king and a son of Zeus himself, had it all. He was powerful, he was respected, and he was a personal friend to the divine. But Tantalus had a twisted desire to test the gods he called his friends. He wanted to know, were they really all-knowing? He decided to host a feast, but the main course was a horror beyond imagination: his own son. This one unthinkable act of hubris unleashed a curse that would doom his entire family to a relentless cycle of madness and murder. The story of this curse begins not with war or betrayal, but with a truly disturbing test. Tantalus was the king of Sipylus in Phrygia, and as a son of Zeus, he enjoyed a status most mortals couldn't even comprehend. He was a regular guest on Mount Olympus, sharing nectar and ambrosia with the gods, and listening in on their divine conversations. But being so close to power didn't make him humble. It made him arrogant. He started to see himself as their equal, and a dark question took root in his mind: were the gods truly omniscient? So he put them to the test. He hosted a grand banquet and invited all the Olympians. The wine flowed. The setting was magnificent, but the main dish concealed a horror. Tantalus had murdered his young son Pelops, chopped him up, and cooked him into a stew, which he then served to the gods. He watched them, waiting to see if they'd notice the grotesque deception. For a moment, it seemed his trick might have worked. Only Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, lost in her own grief over her missing daughter Persephone, was distracted enough to take a bite, consuming the boy's left shoulder. But the other gods knew immediately and recoiled in fury. Zeus was enraged. This wasn't just murder. It was the ultimate betrayal of kinship and piety. The punishment for Tantalus was swift and eternal. He was thrown into Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld, doomed to an eternity of agonizing hunger and thirst. There he stands forever, in a pool of clear water. But whenever he bends to drink, the water drains away. Above him hangs a tree heavy with ripe fruit, but whenever he reaches for it, a wind sweeps the branches just out of his grasp. His torment was so iconic that we get the word tantalize from his name, a permanent reminder of his eternal frustration. But his punishment wasn't the end. For his crime, a curse was laid upon his entire bloodline, an inherited stain that would demand blood for generations to come. The gods, feeling pity for the innocent boy, decided to undo Tantalus's monstrous crime. They gathered the pieces of Pelops's body and brought him back to life. The divine blacksmith Hephaestus even fashioned him a new shoulder from gleaming ivory to replace the part Demeter had eaten. Resurrected and whole again, Pelops grew into a handsome young man, but the shadow of his father's sin clung to him. As a man, Pelops wanted to marry the beautiful princess Hippodamia. The problem was, her father, King Oenomaus of Pisa, who set a deadly challenge for any suitor, beat him in a chariot race to win his daughter's hand. Lose, and you would be executed. Plenty of men had tried, and all of them had died, because the king's horses were a gift from the war god Ares, making him unbeatable. Pelops knew he couldn't win on strength alone. He needed to cheat. He went to the king's charioteer, Myrtilus, and offered him a huge reward. Some say half the kingdom, others say the right to spend the first night with Hippodamia if he would just sabotage the king's chariot. Myrtilus agreed. He secretly replaced the bronze linchpins on the king's chariot wheels with ones made of wax. The race began. As King Oenomaus closed in on Pelops, the wax pins melted, the wheels flew off, and the king was violently thrown from his chariot and dragged to his death. Pelops had won. He claimed his bride and the kingdom of Pisa. But when Myrtilus came to collect his reward, Pelops refused. Fearing the man would expose his treachery, Pelops took him to a cliff and threw him into the sea. As he fell, Myrtilus screamed out a curse of his own, damning Pelops and his descendants to a future of betrayal and murder. And so, a second curse was piled on top of the first. Tantalus had offended the gods. Now Pelops had added betrayal and murder to the family's name. The foundation of the house of Atreus was built on sin, and the violence was just getting started. The curse then passed down to Pelops's two sons, Atreus and Thyestes, and it was in this generation that the family's legacy for horror truly exploded. The brothers were locked in a bitter feud for the throne of Mycenae. Their struggle for power would push them to acts of unimaginable cruelty, turning brotherly rivalry into pure sadistic hatred. Their conflict had actually started years earlier when they conspired to murder their half-brother Chrysippus, who was their father's favorite son. This act had only deepened the curse that now defined their lives. The tipping point for the throne of Mycenae came with a prophecy. The true king would be the one who possessed a lamb with a fleece of pure gold. Atreus found this magical lamb first and claimed it as his divine right to rule. But his brother Thyestes was a master of deceit. He seduced Atreus's wife, Ero, and convinced her to steal the golden lamb for him. Thyestes then publicly challenged his brother. Atreus, not knowing the lamb was gone, foolishly agreed that whoever had the golden fleece should be king. But Atreus added a condition: if he could perform an even greater miracle, like making the sun travel backward in the sky, then he would rule. Thyestes smugly produced the lamb and was hailed as king. But Atreus wasn't bluffing. Furious, he prayed to Zeus, who sided with the rightful heir and did the impossible. For the first and only time in mythology, the sun reversed its course across the sky. The people were terrified. They exiled Thyestes and declared Atreus the true king, chosen by the gods. But for Atreus, the throne wasn't enough. He was consumed by a cold rage. His brother had stolen his kingdom and corrupted his wife. Atreus decided on a revenge so monstrous it would forever be attached to his name. He pretended to reconcile with Thyestes and invited him back for a huge feast. Thyestes, cautious but willing to believe the feud was over, accepted. He came to the palace and was served a lavish meal. When the feast was over, Atreus asked his brother if he enjoyed the food. Thyestes said he had. It was then that Atreus revealed the main course. With a chilling smile, he had another platter brought in. On it were the severed heads, hands, and feet of Thyestes' own young sons. Atreus had murdered his nephews and served their cooked flesh to their father. The horror of it shattered Thyestes' mind. He staggered back, screaming a new, more powerful curse upon his brother, calling for a vengeance that would obliterate Atreus' entire line. Broken and exiled, Thyestes went to the oracle at Delphi. How could he possibly get revenge on a brother capable of such evil? The oracle's answer was as horrifying as the crime itself. The only one who could kill Atreus was a son Thyestes would have with his own daughter Pelopeia. Driven mad by grief, Thyestes followed the prophecy. He found his daughter and, hiding his identity in the darkness, assaulted her. The act added incest to the family's growing list of sins. Pelopia became pregnant and gave birth to a son, whom she named Aegisthus. Overcome with shame, she abandoned the infant in the wilderness to die. But the curse wouldn't be denied its instrument of vengeance. A shepherd found the baby and brought him to the palace of Mycenae. In a twist of fate so perfect you couldn't write it, King Atreus decided to raise the boy as his own son, never knowing this was the child of his hated brother, and the one destined to kill him. Years passed. Aegisthus grew up in the court of the man who had murdered his brothers, believing Atreus was his father. Atreus, meanwhile, finally captured Thyestes and threw him in a dungeon. Ready to end the feud for good, he called for the young Aegisthus and gave him a sword. "Go," he commanded, and killed the prisoner. "Rid me of my brother forever." Aegisthus went into the dungeon, ready to kill the man he knew only as his father's enemy. But when Thyestes saw the sword Aegisthus was carrying, he recognized it. It was the very sword his daughter Pelopia had pulled from her attacker on the night she was assaulted. He asked the boy where he got it, and the horrifying truth unraveled. Thyestes revealed that he was Aegisthus's true father, and that Atreus was the monster who had butchered his siblings. Aegisthus, his world destroyed and rebuilt in a single moment, now had a sword and a terrible purpose. He went back to the throne room and approached Atreus, who smiled, believing his revenge was complete. Instead of confirming Thyestes' death, Aegisthus plunged the sword into Atreus' heart, killing him on the throne he had fought so viciously to protect. The prophecy was fulfilled. With Atreus dead, his sons Agamemnon and Menelaus fled into exile. They would return, however, with help from the king of Sparta. They overthrew Thyestes and reclaimed their father's kingdom. Agamemnon, the elder brother, became the new king of Mycenae and the most powerful ruler in Greece. But the blood curse was just lying dormant, waiting for the next generation to give it a new stage. That stage would be the Trojan War, when Helen, the wife of Agamemnon's brother Menelaus, was taken by the Trojan prince Paris. Agamemnon was chosen to lead the Greek army to get her back. He gathered 1,000 ships at the port of Aulis, but they couldn't sail. The winds refused to blow. A desperate Agamemnon consulted a seer, who gave him devastating news. The goddess Artemis was angry. Agamemnon had killed one of her sacred stags, and then, with the classic arrogance of his family, had boasted he was a better hunter than the goddess herself. To appease her, Artemis demanded a sacrifice, mirroring the sins of his ancestors. Agamemnon had to kill his own child, his daughter Iphigenia. Agamemnon was trapped. As a king, his duty was to the war. As a father, the idea was unthinkable. Torn by the curse's impossible logic, his ambition won out. He tricked his daughter into coming to Aulis, telling her she was to be married to the great warrior Achilles. When she arrived, she was led not to a wedding, but to a sacrificial altar. Agamemnon killed his own daughter for a favorable wind. The fleet sailed for Troy, but back home, his wife, Clytemnestra, never forgave him. The murder of her daughter turned her love into cold, calculated hatred. While Agamemnon was away fighting, she took a new lover, Aegisthus, the cursed son of Thyestes, who had been patiently waiting for his own revenge against the son of Atreus. Together, they plotted. When Agamemnon finally returned from Troy a hero, he walked right into a death trap. Clytemnestra welcomed him with a feast and drew him a bath. As he relaxed in the water, unarmed and vulnerable, she and Aegisthus struck. They trapped him in a net of robes and brutally stabbed him to death. The king was murdered in his own home by his wife and his cousin, the living embodiment of the family's cursed feud. The curse now fell upon the last generation, Agamemnon's children. His daughter Electra lived under the rule of her mother and Aegisthus, her heart burning for revenge. His son Orestes had been smuggled out of Mycenae as a child. and was raised in exile, waiting for the day he could avenge his father. As a young man, Orestes faced the same impossible choice that had plagued his family. A son's sacred duty was to avenge his murdered father, but that meant he would have to kill his own mother, one of the worst sins imaginable. Torn between two sacred duties, Orestes went to the oracle at Delphi. The god Apollo's command was absolute. He must avenge his father. With a god's blessing, Orestes returned to Mycenae in disguise. He and his sister Electra planned the downfall of their mother and her lover. Orestes killed Aegisthus first. Then he confronted Clytemnestra. She begged for her life, even bearing the breast that had fed him as a baby. Orestes hesitated, but he followed Apollo's command. He struck down his mother, finally avenging Agamemnon. The moment she died, however, a new horror began. The Furies, ancient, terrifying deities with snakes for hair, whose purpose was to punish those who killed their own kin, were awakened. Invisible to everyone but him, they swarmed Orestes, driving him to the brink of madness. He fled, pursued across the world by the shrieking ghosts of his own guilt. His flight finally ended in Athens. At the temple of the goddess Athena, he prayed for deliverance as the Furies cornered him, demanding his soul. But Athena, the goddess of wisdom, intervened. She declared that this endless cycle of blood for blood had to stop. Vengeance wasn't the same as justice, so she established something new: a formal trial with a jury of 12 Athenian citizens. On the Hill of Ares, the Furies made their case for the prosecution, arguing that the law against matricide was absolute. Apollo himself appeared for the defense, arguing that Orestes was only following his divine command to avenge his father. When the votes were cast, the jury was split, 6 to convict, 6 to acquit. Athena, as the judge, cast the deciding vote. She acquitted Orestes. Her ruling marked a massive shift. It was the end of the old world of personal vendettas and the birth of a new one based on civic law and rational thought. To appease the enraged Furies, Athena transformed them into the Eumenides, or kindly ones, honored guardians of Athens. And with that final judgment, the blood curse on the house of Atreus was finally broken. The cycle of violence that began with Tantalus's grotesque feast 5 generations earlier was over. The story of the house of Atreus is a brutal saga of pride, betrayal, and revenge. It started with one man's arrogant attempt to fool the gods, and spiraled into a nightmare that spanned generations. From Tantalus's eternal torment to the cannibalistic rage of Atreus, from Agamemnon's sacrifice to Orestes' agonizing choice, the family was trapped in a loop of inherited guilt. Each generation thought they were acting on their own, seeking justice or power, but their choices only seemed to tighten the knot of their fated destruction. The myth is a terrifying exploration of fate versus free will, asking if our lives are ever truly our own. But the story's end offers something more. The trial of Orestes represents the evolution of society itself, the move away from chaotic, cyclical revenge and toward a system of impartial justice. It suggests that even the most powerful curses, the most deeply ingrained cycles of violence can be broken, not with more bloodshed, but with reason, order, and the will to create a better world. The house of Atreus fell, but from its bloody ashes rose the very idea of civil law, a legacy that still echoes today.